Itchy and who else? Guzman on the wheels of steel, keeping us straight. Thank you so much. Now, as you know, each week we have an amazing guest, and what SpeakuP Monday is about is it's a deep dive Q&A in which people inspire people, and Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which is like unity in diversity, find their ways to the surface, and it's about laying inspiration, something that reminds us of something that maybe we should have done, could have done, will do, or something new, right? So our beautiful guest this week is Celinne Da Costa. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
Super welcome. And so for those of you who don't know, so Celinne is an amazing, she's like a story creator, a storyteller. So she'll take you and your story and turn it around into something that can create influence, impact, and income. Right, which is an amazing gift, an amazing skill. So now the first question, as we get delivered a chai latte on camera, thank you very much indeed, my brother. But by the way, chai lattes here at Tropical Nomad are amazing. So don't hold back.
I'm not holding back, even though I might get on my
You know what, we just do this. My darling.
Cheers.
All right. So,
they are amazing, I can attest.
They are amazing, right? Beautiful. So let's get started. So, Celinne, so people watching now may have met you some weeks ago when your beautiful man, AJ, was on the show. And what they got from you was this incredibly beautiful woman with a really wonderful delivery of emotion, right? And wonderful delivery of what it's like to be human, how to create intimacy and vulnerability with another person, how to create that space, that container for people to pour their love into and not feel judged and not feel at all kind of scared about it, right? So the first question then which comes in is that when did you know that you had the ability to do that?
I knew I wanted to be on this hot seat because you were going to ask some serious freaking questions. The ability to create this container?
Yeah, create the container, invite people to contribute, to pour their love, their vulnerability into that container without feeling threatened, without feeling, well, I can't say this because then I might look, like I'm a bad person, or I might look like, that I'm an imposter or something. These little noises that we have in our heads that's trying to keep us away from connecting with one another.
So there wasn't one moment, but rather it's been a very, very powerful journey to that. And what comes through as you were even speaking this is that to create that container requires you to clean yourself out, And so part of my work, in my work with my clients and my work with myself and creating this container that you're speaking of, has been to look at my own wounds or my own clutter and learn how to clean it up. And the more that I've done this, the more that I am able to hold that space for someone else to be vulnerable, for someone else to tell me their story. Because for you to be able to sit with somebody and listen to their story, listen to the shame, listen to the sadness, listen to the love, listen to the entire spectrum of emotion, what you need to do is be able to experience and feel comfortable with those emotions yourself. And that in itself is a journey. And so there wasn't a moment where I'm like, ding, this is something I can do, but rather it's been a series of events that I've been undergoing in the past few years, and the transformation to get me to the place where I've been able to not only create and design my story, but now I'm in the position to also help other people do the same from a very visceral, emotional body, mental, spiritual level.
Yeah, and I love the modalities that you use, and we're going to get into those. Can't wait for that. Yes. But people might be looking at you saying, well, she's been featured in Forbes, she did a TEDx, she's done 1,000 hours of work in this space as a practitioner of all these different modalities that we'll get into. She would never have a bad day. She wouldn't ever wake up thinking feeling shit today, or feeling self-doubt, imposter syndrome, that sort of thing. So firstly, do you ever have those kind of days? And if you do, what do you do to get yourself back into the swing in a way that people maybe watching here could get something out of and maybe try themselves?
I have it all. Because I'm human. And so, yes, of course, imposter syndrome, bad days, like crying days, angry days, screaming into a pillow days. I have it all. And honestly, before I did these modalities and everything we're going to get into today, will explain the how of what I'm about to say, because I know it's a little bit vague and fluffy when I first talk about it, but it's going to be very clear within the container of this interview how. But yeah, I used to just beat myself up for the mood swings, the sadness, the depression. Every time something was wrong with me, it used to be just like an uphill battle to get myself back into place. And part of the work that I do now on myself, and I work with other people, and I work very much in the subconscious mind, is that when you have a bad day, it's not about punishing yourself for having imposter syndrome, for having a bad day, but recognizing where is this coming from and how quickly can I switch the state without bypassing my emotions. So it's really important, because a lot of us, either we get stuck in the emotion of imposter syndrome and we just let it drag on for days or weeks or years, or we feel bad and we just let it just weigh us down. That's normal, but what's important is just, being able to be like, okay, I feel bad. Where's this coming from? And actually doing a little subconscious dive into that. And then not only that, having the tools to be able to process that so that you're not just sweeping it under the carpet, because any emotion that you bury it alive. So it needs to be processed and addressed.
Yeah. So I love that, any emotion you have, you bury it alive. Mm-hmm. And I think that really gets the point across that, hey guys, if you're burying emotions, they're not going to stay buried for long, right? They're coming back.
Yep.
They're coming back with a vengeance. So give us, if you can, maybe the last time it happened to you, what were the steps that you went through that perhaps people can, maybe practical steps that people could say, you know what, I'll give that a try.
Okay. So like a small everyday situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I can definitely speak to that because it happens frequently, where I'll be going about my day and I'm like, oh shit, I'm really feeling the one of I don't feel good enough, or comparing yourself to other people and being like, oh man, like going down that rabbit hole. So what's really important, the first thing is being aware that this is normal, and being aware that yes, you're going to fall into that. When you do, the first thing, so this is part of the process I teach my clients as well, is number one, being aware of what your biggest patterns that don't serve you are, like having that full awareness of, I tend to fall into imposter syndrome. I tend to get angry at myself when things don't go my way. I tend to be upset when I don't get enough sleep. Just actually understanding what are the top ways that you frustrate yourself and get yourself in an unenjoyable state. So first, that. Once you understand what the state is, for example, when I get upset, I compare myself to others. Then the second thing you want to do is actually understand what are the triggers. So what are the triggers? And what I mean by that is throughout your day, if you were to actually objectively look at your day, what are the moments that you're most prone to falling into this kind of behavior? So is it after you've worked for 3 hours in front of your computer? Is that when it usually pops up? Is it when your partner or your parent texts you a certain thing? Is it when your client is nagging you or something like that? There's certain triggers that we have, and getting familiar with what are the things that basically get me into that state, that negative state, although I call it negative, but there's really no such thing. And then once you identify what your triggers is, you want to understand what is your go-to reaction. So it could be, okay, I get frustrated, I compare myself, I spend 30 minutes on Instagram just scrolling, or I feel threatened, I start eating. So actually breaking it down really objectively, like you're a scientist of your own mind. And when you can actually identify that, you can start to be aware of it happening in real time. So then it's your choice whether you want to indulge in it if you want to scroll on Instagram for 3 hours feeling bad about yourself, or you're like, wow, I'm scrolling, let me stop. Then that's the point where you become fully responsible for your actions. And then when you take that's when you actually start to observe, and now you need to process the emotion, which is, how do I feel? I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm sad. Okay. I need to sit with that emotion and actually process it. And there's so many ways to process it. That might look like crying, screaming into a pillow, breath work, whatever it is that you need, but the energy needs to move through your body. And then after that, you can actually, once the energy and the charge releases, then you can put yourself back in a neutral state where you get to decide what your next state is going to be.
Got it. So people here, so we have a studio audience that you're welcome to join every week. So now what might happen in a studio audience is there might be certain things that resonate with you, or might be certain things that conflict with you. So see if you can remember the things that conflict with you, if there are any, and those that resonate, because the time will come when you have a chance to ask a question. So it might be, can you go a bit deeper into that process of releasing, right? So there's no silly question here, and you will have a moment or opportunities to ask. So just keep that in mind. So what I love about what you do is that, that you help people to sculpt and to create their story, right? And then, as we said before, how we can transform that story into influence, into impact, and into income. Mm-hmm. So then, as you said before, which I loved as well, about how it comes back to you, right? And through healing those things within you, you began to be able to hold that space for others, right? So then, using the same rationale, if you like, so when it comes to people's stories, right? So, and this is whatever comes up for you. So what about your own story puts you in a unique position to be able to do this? Almost like you turn your messes into manifestations, right? So whatever comes up for you, like so when I say that, your story, what in your story created the ability and the opportunity for you to do the work that you do now? Mm-hmm.
So, what comes up for me, I guess that's what I gotta go with, huh? It's almost, I feel that one of the things that puts me in that position is that growing up, I almost feel like I've had a tasting platter of all the things that people, like, not all the things, but how do I put this?
Tell us.
Think about it like you have this plate of like little appetizers, and it's just like all these traumas that that a lot of people, that at least I work with, go through. And I almost feel like I'm like, okay, let me taste this, taste that. And it's been enough for me to be able to connect with different people on different levels. And without going into the story of the story, because I don't want to really delve into the pieces, but, to give you an example, for example, growing up with an emotionally abusive parent allows me to connect to a lot of people who have gone in their story through abuse, and they're ashamed of it and they don't know how to talk about it. So I don't. It's like it's almost like an entry point into the emotion, the collective emotion of that, or growing up being very displaced, and by the time I was 18, I lived in over a dozen homes. Not by choice, and it allows me to relate to people who have been displaced in their life in some way, shape, or form, being from 3 different, 2 nationalities, but also having spent time in a third one allows me to, it's just what I really, what's really been important to me since I was a child is how can I connect with the people in front of me. And what I've actually realized is that the first way to do it is to do so through their shadow.
So can you explain to people here what you mean by shadow?
Well, we all have a duality inside of us, and this is the world. It's good, bad, light, shadow, and inside of us we have our light, which is we're beautiful beings, we're multidimensional beings, beautiful humans, and we also have a shadow side. We have the dark side, which is the part that a lot of us spend a lot of time beating ourselves up on, I'm this, we have a list of things we don't like about ourselves and qualities that we deem as bad. And essentially growing up, we have the list of qualities that we want to be, both the ones that we naturally are and the ones we think we need to be in order to be accepted by society or be loved by our parents or whatever it is. And then we have have a list of qualities that we put into the shadow, that we disown about ourselves, that we essentially ignore about ourselves, that are going to creep up one way or another, because we're whole, and every part of us needs to be seen and heard and have a voice. And so they creep up and basically unconsciously sabotage you. And you know, when we're looking at story, it's not just, a lot of people, they focus on what's my story, like what are the beautiful things that I want to say about myself, here's where I grew up, here's what I achieved, here's how much money I made, here's the job that I've done, here's how many people I serve, look at me, it's amazing. And we're just flaunting that light side and then completely ignore the shadows. This is what I'm ashamed of. This is what I'm afraid of. This is what I don't want people to know about me. Unfortunately, those things unconsciously show up anyways through your story, whether you like it or not. So, you know, even going back to the how of that question, it's just so important to be able to embrace and be comfortable with all of you, the good and the bad. Although I use that facetiously, because there's no good or bad, there just is. So.
Yeah, got it. Ooh, yeah. So then for you, doing the work that you do, so, you know, like, again, whatever comes up for you, you know, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced? Because it, as you said, you know, you've really experienced, you know, like this degustation, right? This beautiful degustation menu, a bit of everything. And, you know, sometimes it can be perhaps challenging not to maybe let them in a little bit too far. Yeah. Where then it starts to impact who you are, right? So then perhaps from that perspective, whatever comes up for you. So what has been some of the most challenging kind of times, not necessarily the people, but what was going on for you and how did you bring yourself back?
Yeah, so I believe that the most challenging piece is not the one where we're here, but rather getting out of the rabbit hole. So one of the things that I realize when we look at traumas, or, you know, the dark side, the shadow part, the things that we carry that have hurt us, that have wounded us, that we're ashamed of, that we put into that dark dungeon will, you know, Carl Jung, he says, until you make the unconscious conscious, the unconscious will rule your life and you will call it fate. Ooh. And one of, You
got to say it again, but real slow, so
Sorry.
Everyone gets it. That's amazing.
Yes, until you, and I might not be perfectly quoting it, but it's pretty on point. Until you make the unconscious conscious, the unconscious will rule your life and you will call it fate.
That's meaty. Yeah. That's very juicy.
And it's that insight rules a lot of the work that I do, because it's not just, again, when we're talking about story, we're looking at, here's my public story, which is actually only half of the equation. The other half is the inner story, because one needs to mirror the other. They have to balance out. And so, you know, for me, the biggest challenge, especially when I started doing this kind of work, is, and I come from an advertising and branding background, so for me it's natural to create, to craft and to, you know, the marketing and the branding and creating that polished appearance, that there was so much time that I was spending on creating the public story, on creating the external brand, the external facade of what's the story I want to tell, what are the polished pieces that I want my audience to receive from me. That what ended up happening is that, you know, even you were saying, like, yeah, the TEDx and Forbes and, you know, the podcast, whatever, like, I got the name, I got the brand, I got everything that I wanted and more on the outside, and I found myself in a position where the story I was telling myself was completely out of whack with the story that I created externally. And that is the point where I feel a lot of people hit at some point in their career, in their success, or whatever it is that they want to create. You know, it depends on how aware you want to be and how present you want to be for your own life, determines whether this happens when you're 30 or when you're 60 or 70 or you're on your deathbed. And I just hit that point when I thought to myself, wow, what is success without fulfillment? I don't understand why I'm doing all these things. I mean, I'm creating all this, and I'm a story, you know, expert, and I'm helping people tell their story, and I was doing a very good job. And then I hit a point where my story was really pretty on the outside, but inside I was still a mess. I was still feeling a lot of pain. I was still running away from myself. I was having issues outside. Like, if you look at the life wheel and it's like business, have you ever done a life wheel where you have business, finances, relationships, health, and then you if you have one, it's like, great, you're doing a 10 out of 10 of business. What about relationships? You're like a 3 out of 10. What about health? You're a 4 out of 10. So what is that really? What are you actually creating for yourself? And to me, the biggest challenge was, number one, owning up to that and taking responsibility, which is, I believe and have witnessed, is what we most struggle with, is actually taking full radical responsibility for everything that's wrong in our life. Because we want to blame the shadow. We want to blame everyone else and project it. But what happens when you start living your life, taking full radical responsibility for who you are and everything that goes wrong and right in your life?
And there might be people here, right, saying radical responsibility. Maybe I get it philosophically. And maybe when I ask this question, the answer is pretty simple. But how do people start on that road, right, to taking radical responsibility for everything that's happening to them, for them in their life?
It's a simple road, but it's not an easy one. And that's why most people won't. Because it does require you to look at every single thing in your life and not blame yourself. Not, it's my fault. This is my responsibility. And sometimes that looks like looking at things that you just cannot fathom how it could be your responsibility. And I remember I had when I started my business, and when I started hiring a team in my business a few years ago, and I remember just like my VA kept fucking up and just mistakes were being made. I'm like, oh my God, you are fucking up. You are doing this wrong. You're not doing your job, which was true. The job wasn't being done. But I remember I had a friend of mine say, who was this is his expertise, was building teams, and he said, it's your responsibility. And I'm like, what? No, they're fucking up. What are you talking about? It's like, no, this is your business. This is your baby. If your team's fucking up, 100% your responsibility. And I remember just not being able to accept that, not wanting to. How is it my responsibility? They're not doing their job. Cool. And I hire them. And I lead them. And I don't fire them. So that piece, that's just a really small way. But there's certain, for people, when you're looking at the things in your life, in your romantic relationships, in your business, in your finances, and you don't like what's happening, you need to ask yourself, how is this my responsibility and no one else's? It doesn't matter that the bank interest rates suck. It doesn't matter that the guys on Tinder aren't quality. It doesn't matter that the team members that you're finding on Upwork don't meet your expectations. Your responsibility, that's just a projection of what it is that you're creating for yourself. So that's the most difficult part. And when people say, when it sounds nice in philosophy, as you said, it sounds nice, I take responsibility for my life. But really what this is a practice. It's a non-negotiable one. And it's a discipline. So asking yourself, are you willing to take responsibility for your life? Yes or no. If the answer is yes, then another journey begins from there.
Got it. Now just look into the room, right? Who here is on Tinder? Put your hand up. All right, good. So those of you watching at home, we've got maybe 20% of the room is on Tinder. I just want to just, when something sticks in your head, it's like, Tinder, And does any of this resonate with you? Maybe have a chat to her afterwards. I love that. Beautiful. So ego, right? So ego, what I hear and what you're saying was this thing about our ego. We all have one, and maybe this is part of the shadow that we bury, right? But if people are watching now, maybe they're coaches, maybe they want to be coaches, or maybe they're people who are being coached, how do you deal with ego? Yeah.
First, and this is a dear mentor said this to me, and I did not get it back in the day. Everything that comes after I am is ego. First, you just need to recognize and acknowledge that. I am, Italian. I am a businesswoman. I am successful. I am fun. I am crazy. I am whatever. It's all construction. that we've created. So the good news is that we get to create that.
Yeah.
And when we say I am, anything that comes after that, don't fall into the trap of believing that that's actually who you are.
So what you're saying, I think about, we're in Bali, and people in here are very spiritual. Hello, Alexandra. Good to see you. Very spiritual beings, right? So the I am is one of the most powerful states. I am X. I am. So it's a huge thing. It's the most, probably the two most powerful words in the universe, right? So. But what you're saying is that it's not necessarily, it is good and bad, it's not necessarily a bad thing to use the I am, but don't fall into the trap of believing that you really are that. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Okay. Correct. And one of the things, when I'm working with my clients, I mean, people always get a surprise because they're like, I hired you to help me with my brand story, and now I have to question everything that I am and more. But it's, are you familiar with the concept of metamorphosis with butterflies? So when a caterpillar decides, nature decides that it's time to become a butterfly, the caterpillar goes into its little cocoon and it completely liquefies itself. Yeah. Just completely becomes a liquid mush of material and tissue and whatever caterpillars are made of, and it reconstructs itself as a butterfly. It takes about 3 hours for this process to happen. If that process is interrupted, the caterpillar dies. It will never become a butterfly. And so going back to when it comes to ego, and the first thing that when I'm working with my clients is, first of all, helping understand what are those subconscious pieces that you are ignoring right now, that are unconsciously sabotaging you right now. Let's look at them right now so that bleeding can stop. And then one other thing that I take them through very, very quickly is creating the separation between the ego and their soul. And constantly in my sessions, they're like, oh, but I don't know how to do this. I'm like, who's talking?
Wow.
Who's talking? And then you'll see their eyes go like, that's my ego. That's your ego. Cool. Now we're clear. What does your soul say about this? So when it comes to, it's number one, we need to create the separation. The soul, the observer, the ego. The ego creates everything after I am. And that's totally fine. We all have egos. It's fine. It's not even about keeping them in check. It's not even about, it's rather being aware that everything you say that you are is a construction of you. So when we do this with our stories, what I find is that most people, especially in the online industry, their stories are total unconscious ego constructions. And their reactions to their childhood wounds with all the ways that they want to be seen and validated but don't feel like they are, but haven't actually addressed the source of where that's coming from. So what really happens is you have a reaction where you create this external image that then you plaster online based on what you think other people will think about you, or based on, this coaches fall into this trap all the time. This is what the other coach is doing, so let me do this instead, and let me position myself, and let me write my caption like this other person who has this many followers are doing, and this is my ideal audience, so now let me communicate the way that I know that they'll like. Boom, here's my story.
Got it.
That will not resonate in the long term. It can trick people in the short term. Yeah. It doesn't have legs. It doesn't have a foundation.
Got it. So then moving on to that, right, into that space of you creating stories for people. And we spoke earlier on about these different modalities that you use. So maybe if you can spend a little bit of time just explaining to the people maybe watching some of these modalities that come up for you that you found to be really helpful in allowing people to really tap into their soul, right? And come from there.
Yeah. I know that there's a lot of talk these days around subconscious programming and unconscious, and it's like, what is that really? And the more I understood coming from that brand strategy, at first external background of let's create the brand on the outside and the story on the outside, and I got the marketing and the branding, and I got studied all of that, how to create it, colors, and how to come off in this certain way, how to present yourself, how to pitch, and all those things. I covered that, and then I was seeing that people were getting results, but they weren't feeling, they were still struggling with all these insecurities and these fears, and they're just stuck there, because as you know, it doesn't matter how much money you make or how many things you get featured on, if at the end of the day you go to bed and you're like, wow, I'm a failure, right? And so that's when I realized I need to go deeper. I need to actually understand what's happening underneath the hood. That's where I started the journey of understanding that the internal story, not just the external story that you project out into the world, the public story, but the private story. And I realized that in order to delve into this world, I needed equipment, I needed tools, I needed the know-how. And so part of the tool set that I use, I'm a master in Neuro Linguistic Programming practitioner, breathwork practitioner, hypnotherapy. So with these tools, and then obviously more tools, but those are the big three. What I realized is that this is not a thing you mindset hack. Your mind is a part of the equation, but you also need to work with the subconscious. You need to work with your body and your body intelligence and your emotions. And so, for example, you can't, when you're coaching, what I realized is that I'd be like, but you're not an imposter. Let's mindset hack your way that you're not an imposter. Here, let me show you, through your story, let me show you the evidence of all the reasons why you're not an imposter. And sure, it would make people feel better to be like, wow, my story, you crafted it in such a way that I'm like a really awesome person. I'm not an imposter. But then they would still feel that. And what I realized is that needs to be removed and pulled out at the root. In order to do that, we need to understand where was the first moment where you believed that in this instance you were not enough, that you were not worthy, that you were an imposter. That requires some time travel, usually into your childhood, usually before the age of 7. Reliving that moment, understanding the dynamics of this moment. Maybe it was something your mother said to you. Maybe it was an incident that happened in the playground. Reliving that, what are the emotions that you're feeling, allowing your body to process that emotion, process it fully, which can be done through hypnotherapy and breathwork. And that gets released on a visceral level. Like there's neuroscience to this. There's, trauma work as well, that you need to go back to the root of where that belief was formed and then actually process the emotion that anchored in that belief. And that will release it and allow you to reprogram consciously. So we're getting, it's a little bit more into the layers and into the rabbit hole right now. But yeah, it's really important to understand that the pieces of you that where you're like, those things that persist, those insecurities that keep persisting and keep biting you in the ass are coming from a much, much, much deeper place. And these modalities help us access that without putting you through 2 to 3 years of therapy.
Got it. And you know what's coming next. One of yours that you pulled out from the root.
Oh boy. Okay. So I already know what it is. I just like do the thinking to be like, is there anything else that? But it's just like, no, that's the one I gotta go with. You know? Gosh.
Don't make me do it, Rob. Don't make me do it.
So
no, it's like, do it.
You're making me do it. It's fine.
Do it. I'm gonna do it. Do it.
Relationships. Mm-hmm.
Deeper, more. Give us more.
Give you more. Okay. Train wreck for most of my life with this topic. And it started becoming very clear as I got my business together. So usually, what we love to do is that when we have that big gaping wound, we like to cover it up with something else that we can do really well. So, it usually business and love are the biggest culprits where it's like your love life's going great. Let me just kind of ignore like the business problems, right? Or the other way around. So for me, it was about I'm going to be a strong, independent woman, build my business, like go, go, go. And I was so focused on that. And the moment that my business like started to fit and just flow, then my relationship wounds were like, hi, like we're ready for you to address me. And for me, it was something that I suffered like really deeply with for the majority of my adult life was the ways that I would, was the kind of men that I would attract, and also the ways that I would let myself, I would just give so much of myself with like zero boundaries, with zero consideration for me in my relationships. Consistently attracting emotionally unavailable men who reminded me of my father, but I refused to admit that I had daddy issues, so I kept doing it, There are lots to be had here, but I'm going to let you ask the questions that hurt, because I'm not going to go down easy with this one.
No, you're good. You know what? Today I'm going to let you off easy, meaning he's not going to let you off easy. So, but here's the thing, which I love about you, right? So just from the things that I hear about your past and your story, right? You're a person who is very cognizant of the fact that the things that were messes for me, I can turn into things that can empower other people, which I think is super cool, and I love that, right? So I'm not going to put him on the spot this week like I did to him, like I did to you when he was talking, but we've got your beautiful man here, AJ, who I know a little bit as well. He's an incredible guy. So this is what I love, right? So you recognized some of your relationship hurdles or patterns, right? And you overcame them through pulling it out via the root.
Yeah.
But then what you've also done is go one step further, and I know that you two have got a really cool workshop or course coming up. So can you tell us, in the context of what you've said, in a way, like what that's about, right? And what people can get from it, because you've clearly learned a great deal. So I'd love to see how you,
Yeah. So, years of toxic relationships, of attracting emotionally unavailable men, of not being able to speak up for what I wanted, of not being able to create boundaries, of really, and I know that some women in this audience feel me, just, going for the guy, really liking him, then he's avoiding and he's lying, and then you're getting all attached, and then it's not working out. Why isn't he texting me? Why is he ghosting me? Like, that is, we all have our own version of, at least those of us struggling with toxic relationship patterns, or even not just toxic, but also not fully healed. Because I don't want to just say it's either toxic or nothing, but not fully healed. And there's all these things that we're not doing in our relationships, and we're not showing up and doing, because, at least in my view, a relationship is a tool for enlightenment. It's a path to evolution, to growing yourself, to bettering yourself. You should be better every single day with your partner. Unfortunately, most of us aren't, because we're stuck in these loops where we just want to engage in relationships to make up for the gaps and the loss that we feel inside. Oh, my daddy never looked at me or never took care of me a certain way, so now I need a man to take care of me this way. My mother neglected me when I was younger, so now I need a woman that will. So it's like we use, a lot of people, unfortunately, use their partner as a way to fulfill their own unresolved wounds and needs, which is really just a shame, because rather than growing, you're just kind of stuck in these dynamics that make you unhappy and keep you from actually speaking up for what you want and what you need. And so, I've worked through that like in a really quantum way, in the sense that I was able to understand that the reasons why I was attracting a certain kind of man is because I was unwilling to look at and take responsibility for the ways that I was calling in that man. I was calling in that man over and over and over again, because my unconscious was begging for me to just resolve these wounds once and for all, which I kept ignoring. When I became aware of that and said, I'm going to look at why I'm unhappy with relationships. I'm going to take full responsibility that I'm not attracting the partner that I want to be attracting. And I'm going to do the work to actually look at where are these wounds coming from, how do I heal them, and how do I rewrite my story around relationships, which was extremely disempowering and extremely of me being the victim and being at whim to any fuckboy that came around. Turning that around, first of all, I called in my dream partner. And second of all, what AJ and I have been learning together and really creating together is, what does it mean to be in a conscious relationship where we are helping and supporting one another to heal our deepest shadows. Any fear, any sadness, any insecurity gets brought up on the table. It gets discussed. It gets resolved. And that's what we created. It's called Rewrite Your Relationship Story workshop. It's to help people understand what are those unconscious wounds, habits, patterns that you're engaging in that keep you from, number one, having the relationship that you have. This is for both people with partners as well as people who are single. What is keeping you from having the relationship that you truly want, because it's you? it's your responsibility. So let's look at what's unconsciously happening. Let's look at how it is that you need to reprogram that and release that, which is where I bring in the modalities to actually release that on a mind, body, soul level. And then once you're aware of that, what does it take for you to show up as 100% of yourself, unapologetically, in a relationship, ask for what you want and need, set clear boundaries, and have your partner do the same, so that you are both helping one another transform and evolve, which translates into doing better in your business, which translates into being happier, which translates into evolving as a human being. So that's really the next piece. I mean, of course, I work with business owners as well, but in the relationship story category, it's about rewriting that story from the inside out and being able to call in your dream relationship and being 100% of yourself in it and heal yourself in it as well.
That's beautiful. To give you a little bit of time maybe to grab some water. So for about, I think 10 years, maybe more, I was going through the same thing, right? I'd had this pattern with women that I would attract. And, I was a coward, right? So I'll be the guy who, it's called attachment disorder. Check it out if you think you have it. If it
we
resonates
cover
with
that
you.
as well.
Oh, I love it. Attachment disorder. Oh, if only I knew before. And so what it was is that I would attach really quickly, deeply, powerfully, right, to an amazing woman. And then the moment that it came for me to open up and to be vulnerable with this beautiful person that I was with, I would clam up. So where this thing called attachment disorder was coming in was that I believed that I was born alone, in the world alone, and I would die alone. So alone 3 times, which was great, going through the 18 years of children's homes to be resilient and go through all these different experiences of abuse in different ways and come out of that and have the strong suit, the armor to get through it. But when it comes to relationships where you need, guys, talking to the guys now, to be open and vulnerable with how you feel, right? I wasn't able to do that because I was afraid that they would leave me. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm going to leave them first. But I was a coward because instead of me saying, hey, I don't think this is working out, honey, I'm out, I would be a bit distant. Mm-hmm. Right? I wouldn't be as warm and as close as I was before. And then what would happen is that it would, because we're very close, right, it would create that question in our relationship. And my partner would pick up on it because it's like, it's like a brick. Boom. It's like, it's the elephant in the room, right? And they would say, so Rob, are we good? Like, is there something going on with you? Something going on with us? Do we need to take a break? Do we need to think about this? And I've said this before to a few people, but Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, these Guy Ritchie movies, he has a way of shooting. I can see one guy smiling over here. You know what's coming next, Thomas. Is so the screen splits into 3. And the first part, or the first third of the screen, is me having this conversation. The second part of this screen, or the second third of this screen, is me running out the door. The third part, the final part of this screen was me arriving on a plane in a different country, drinking like a beer or something. So we're talking like major coward syndrome. We're talking like, oh, honey, are we good? Do we need to take a break? Mm-hmm. I'm out. I'm gone. So I didn't even have the upfrontness to deal with it directly. Mm-hmm. I dealt with it by running, and I dealt with it by setting up a lack of trust or something in a relationship. It was raised and I would run. Mm-hmm. And that's what attachment disorder was. And it took about 3 or 4 relationships for me to, when I saw what was happening, the result of my actions, during this time, guys, I was like, it's not me, it's them, all this other rubbish that we put out there, that I was putting out there. So I finally made the most, the craziest revelation. Come in. The craziest revelation, and that was the only common denominator in all these relationships was me. So therefore, the problem wasn't out there, it was in here. And once I made that leap, then everything began to change, because then I started to take real responsibility for my actions and everything else, and the rest is kind of not history, but the rest is sort of history. So I really get and I'm sure we all do, those of us who have been in relationships, and if we really look at it, the people which we've been in a relationship with may look different, but these things all have threads in common that we've always been going through, and that's one of the signs, right? That, hey, listen, there's something here you're in something here that wants to be expressed or dealt with or dissolved or acknowledged, right? I love it. And so the other thing which I love about your story is that in a little chat we had earlier on, it was about this transition, that you're going through, and so you're coming in with this, this is what I do for a living, corporate background, and then you're helping people to sculpt their story in an external way. Then you get the realization that the external isn't enough. And these people are temporarily happy, but they're falling off the wagon. So then you go deeper, learn all these modalities to help people express it on the mind, body, soul level. And then you start to come into a period of time where you realize, well, these skills, aptitudes that I have can be used in a different way and can impact people not only in this arena, but other arenas too. So could you explain to everybody what I was just saying? Yeah.
Of course. So the biggest insight that I had, and this is where my work and my business really started taking off, which is that, sure, we can sculpt your external story, and we got to look at what's going on inside first. And what would happen is, with these other areas of your life, and I'm telling you, every single client that I've had that's coming to me for business, every single one, we always uncover something off with their relationship story that's actually bleeding into their business. That avoidance pattern, the way, like if you were a client and you are hiring me for business and it's got nothing, you don't want me to talk to you about your love life, and you're just like, no, Celine, I just want you to write my story, and we're working together, it's gonna show up in the ways that maybe you're ghosting your clients. It's gonna show up in the ways that you get really close with your team members, and then you basically make them feel abandoned, and then you blame them for it. It's going to show up in business partnership dynamics, because a pattern is a pattern. It doesn't discriminate. Your subconscious / unconscious, these things that you're running, these loops that you're running are going to be, it's not like, oh, let me go over here in a relationship, but I'm going to skip this behavior in business, right? So it's almost like if you're dishonest everywhere. It's a trait. So until you work on that dishonesty and take responsibility for it and turn it around, it's going to show up in every area of your life. It's just going to get magnified more in certain areas than other areas because, for example, your love life is triggering that wound much, much more because you get more intimate than you would, say with a team member or a client. You don't go there because you're in a power position. And so that doesn't get triggered as deeply. So what I realize is when I'm working, it's holistic. Everything is interconnected. So they're coming to me because they want to grow their brand, and they're coming to me because, I want to get well known. I want to be a recognized figure in my space. And then we realize that they're neglecting their health. We're realizing that they have an eating disorder, that their love life is just horrible. And, I can't tell you, thinking about a client specifically who just couldn't launch because this guy that is basically same dude, different face, broke up with her in such a disastrous way that she could not emotionally hold, that she had to cancel her entire launch. So there's parts around, we cannot neglect when we're looking at this is the way that, I'm going to categorize my marriage isn't going well or my relationship isn't going well. Let me just put that in the corner and just keep dealing with my business. That's gonna go over. And so part of the work that I do is I help people find their internal story and actually understand it. What does that mean? Because your internal story is much more complex and nuanced than what you're putting out there into the world, which is basically a simplified 3D version as opposed to the 5D multidimensionality that is going on inside of you. So we look at different categories. What's going on? What's your work story? What's your financial story? What's your relationship story? What is your wellness story? What is your self-worth story? And what is your visibility story, your willingness to be seen? And we do an audit of all these stories, and we actually can start to understand all the disempowering stories that you're telling yourself inside of your head. And when we pick like the main culprit, like, for a lot of women in business, it's love. It's like, oh, I don't want to go there. And then we go there, and it's like, look at all these patterns, and you tell me how they're showing up in their business, and they're just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I never saw the connection. I'm afraid of, a client example, her fear, she's terrorized of rejection, of being rejected with guys. So she'll ghost them first, like she'll pull back first. And she was doing this for oh my God, for months. And then complaining to me that she wasn't getting PR and then I told her, okay, let's look at that. Why aren't you getting PR? She wouldn't even bother to send the pitches because she already assumed she was getting rejected. I'm like, no wonder. That's what you do to people. So you want to see a difference there? Correct your behavior here. Let's release whatever is holding you back, which, of course, when we rewind, it goes back to her relationship with her father and how he was emotionally unavailable. So this is the minefield that we go into, and this is why this work is very nuanced, but it's so powerful, because when you start to untangle the knots and you start rewriting these stories, and you start with the one that's hurting you the most, and then you kind of like, once you learn how to do it one time, you can just do it over and over and over and over again. It leaks into everything else, and part of that's also when we're looking at the relationship workshop as well. It's looking at that, knowing that whatever you untangle there is going to translate into how you do business and how you do life.
Such a powerful approach, right? Because it affects everything. Now, so guys who are here, so this is we're all part of this interview, Q&A, two people getting to know one another. So we don't really know one another, just so you all know, right? So part of this is that I get to know Celinne, she gets to know me, and then you're along for the ride, right? Except you get a chance to play a great part in this as well by asking a question or questions. So we're going to get the microphone ready. So whoever's got a question, put your hand up and the microphone will come to you. Cool, we've got a few. We'll do ladies first, Thomas, unless you scratch your nose. So just remember though, while Itchy gets the mic to her, there's no silly question, right? So we're here together. It's like a collective. So sometimes we have this question of like, I can't ask that question. It's too silly. I can't ask that question because she already said it and I wasn't listening. You can, because somebody else has that question too, but is too afraid to ask it. So please help us all and ask that question. So over to you, darling.
Hi, Celinne.
Hello.
I would like to ask, what do you think is the next step in your journey or your story? More healing modalities, scaling your business? What's coming, or what do you see in your future?
Oh, wow. You're coming in with the big guns. The big guns. I definitely feel the feeling is needing to go deeper into the human psyche and helping people understand themselves truly from the inside out. And what comes through is mind, body, emotion, spirit. Because before, as I had mentioned, it was really this focus on helping people write their external story, and that's still something that I do and want to do, but that's 20% of the equation. The other 80% is helping business owners or whoever, really, entrepreneurs, leaders, people who want to make an impact in the world. There's so much shit that's clogging their vision right now, their own unconscious shit, that to me, my passion is awakening them to all the crap that's in their way, not in a fearful way, but actually helping them clear it in a very quantum, fast way. Because, you were saying that you're struggling with this for 10 years. I was struggling with it for 15 years. The moment I really figured out the codes, it took me less than a year to turn this around. And now with my clients, it can take weeks, months. It's just the speed through which we can release these wounds and reprogram ourselves when we're conscious and showing up for it and taking full responsibility responsibility for it, is quantum. And so where I see myself is continuing to help people rewrite their internal story, but from a quantum level of like, let's let go of this armor, step into the absolute truth of who you are, and share your story from that place. Because when you do that, that story becomes medicine. And that medicine is going to help a lot of people. So I really see myself going deeper into that 80%. If you think about the iceberg, like the little conscious 5% and then the 95% going down, that's where I want to go, is helping people reprogram and reinvent themselves really from inside out in the most beautiful way possible.
Hey.
So
just a little background. So I'm a dating coach, and I've had the absolute pleasure of watching Celinne and AJ evolve, and from the external perspective. So, I get to watch their healthy relationship blossom, and I've seen how far Celinne has come. And I'm curious, like on the back end, like when I'm not able to perceive you guys, like how do you maintain this relationship in this healthy way, and how do you continue to have it evolve? Because it's not like you had all these toxic patterns and then one day you fixed it and just had a great relationship. Like, what does the maintenance actually look like?
Oh, that's good. The maintenance.
I try.
The maintenance. Well, let's give it a timeline, because from the moment where I woke up and realized, oh my God, I cannot be in another dysfunctional, toxic relationship in my life again. I just want to give a reality check, right? Because I don't want, like you said, it's not like, oh, I was in toxic relationships and then I woke up one day and everything was fine. Maintenance. From the day where I woke up and said, absolutely no more of this, I'm taking full responsibility for my unhappiness in my relationships, and I'm calling in a good man, and I'm going to show up for that man. It was actually a little less than a year. It was about 11 months of turnaround time. So the maintenance looked like, number one, understanding absolutely this is a problem, no more. And that it starts with that decision of no more, I'm going to turn this around. And then you have the, okay, what does that mean kind of period of scrambling around, being like, I need to understand what that actually looks like. So it looked like commitments to me. It looked like 6 months of being abstinent, taking myself off the dating pool and saying, I'm not going to touch another until I fix this. So that was very motivating, as you can imagine. There was definitely like a carrot at the end of the road, and so it was that, and then doing the modalities that I'm speaking about, which is understanding, asking questions. Why am I attracting this kind of man? Who did this man remind me of? Oh fuck. Okay, I gotta go there. It's my father. You know what I mean? And yeah, exactly. And it's just some people just don't. They're like, nope, denial, avoidance, distraction, and they live like that for 10 years, right? Or whatever years. So it's asking the hard questions of, okay, where is this coming from? And actually, what I realized is that first I tried to blame it on my dad, and then realized, no, actually it's also my mom. And then I tried to blame it on my mom too. And then I was like, actually, no, it's me allowing this to continue over and over again. And that's really where I brought in breathwork to release, oh my God, so many cries, so much release, so much hypnotherapy, so much screaming, and actually dealing with the 29 years of repressed emotion that I felt around this topic, and the shame that I felt around this topic. It all had to come out and get processed, and I was there for it because I was done. And by bringing that up, doing the work, which was definitely really challenging, that's when I actually did start going, dating. And I had dated somebody before AJ, and then realized, oh, okay, we're kind of there, but not quite. And actually doing a little bit of adjusting and being willing to fail and be disappointed. And then from there is when I was able to really be like, okay, here are the wounds. Here is what's coming up for me. And it's honestly, there's no shortcut. It's just healing that. It's healing that, and now the maintenance is continuing to heal that, because you can only get so far. And this is what I really love about relationships and having this container of two people, is you can only get so far doing the healing on your own, because then it's kind of like coaching. I'm a coach. I need a coach because I have a blind spot. I can get so far in my own healing and my own work, and then at one point the buck stops because I don't have a mirror to constantly show me what it is that I'm missing. Because when you get phase one is doing this work, and then phase two is like, okay, now I'm in a partnership that I'm happy with, that I want to be in, that I'm committed to, and now all this other shit's coming up that would have not come up if I was by myself. And so the maintenance there is, number one, a commitment to truth, and being able to really, there's all these things that I used to hide, of being insecure or even doubts, things that are mortifying. And now I feel comfortable with like conversations that I've had with AJ being like, well, I'm having doubts about this because X, Y, Z. Like most people are like, oh no, I can't tell him I have doubts because then we'll break up and then this will happen. Like, no, there's no topic that doesn't get touched. Like everything that is a fear, nothing festers inside. It needs to come out. I'm afraid of this, or I'm doubt this. I'm angry at you because I'm blaming myself because I'm insecure about this because, and some of these things evoke a lot of shame. It's things like, oh my God, I'm jealous of that woman, and you're like, no, I'm a strong, independent woman, but no, I am. You know what I mean? And so you gotta basically air out the laundry before it starts to stink. And that's really what I found is a really powerful when in partnership. To do that, you need to understand conscious communication. You need to be really strong in your own boundaries. You need to be clear on what you want and need before bringing it to your partner. And you need to be willing to have the tough conversations, to have the embarrassing conversations, and truly talk about everything, which is part of also what we're now teaching in the workshop as well. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, Brother Thomas, you still got that question? Thank you. By the way, while Thomas is about to speak, just want to acknowledge you for being you. Right? Vulnerable, open. I love it. Thank you. Respect. PT.
Yes, I can only add on to that. Thanks for sharing so vulnerably. You mentioned, I have two questions, one from before and one that just came up now. Number one, you said you want to give yourself like a time. It was 6 months. And when you're done, then you're like ready to go to the next step. When was that moment? Was there a moment where you felt like, I'm done, I'm ready now? And what did that look like? That's the first question.
Yeah. So, to be clear, when I said 6 months, it wasn't like 6 months, it was at least, and I will keep going until, if at 6 months I'm not where I want to be in terms of I'm still engaging in the same old patterns, or I'm still attracted to the same kind of guy, then I'm off the market until I really get this resolved. And to answer your question, yes, actually there was a moment when I realized and I remember it specifically when I was having a conversation with the guy I dated before AJ, which was, he was interested in me, and I'm like, listen, here's what my conditions are. Here's what my standards are. I'm not going to sleep with you the first night. If you're trying to date me because you want to sleep with me, it's not happening. And by the way, this is within 3 hours of meeting him. It's not happening until I feel ready and comfortable. We have a conversation about it. I am looking for a serious relationship. I'm not looking to date. I'm not looking to fuck around. I want to be properly dated. I don't want to hang out or be texted or be like, hey, what's up? If your intention is to come at me, have sex, or ghost me, or dating other people at the same time you're dating me, I am not your woman. And that was the moment I looked at him in the eyes, and I just remember him saying to me, I've never had a woman talk to me like that. And I'm like, cool, that's fine, I will. And that was the moment where I'm like, oh my, holy shit. Like, I was like, did that just come out of, Tessa remembers, she's my housemate, my best friend. I'm like, did that just come out of my mouth? And it wasn't, because there's this place where we come at it from this place of, this happens with a lot of people where it's you become so defensive and so like, no, you're gonna be in a serious relationship with me. Like it's coming when you're wounded, when you have the wound. You'll either go like not speak up for what you say, or you'll overcompensate, and you'll like be really aggressive or like in someone's face, being like, you don't get to cross my boundaries, right? But when the wound is healed, or you're present with yourself, then you can say, here's my boundaries, and there's no emotional charge. It's just like, this is what it is. I respect myself. I love myself. And so this is what I am looking for. Are you fine with that? If not, the door's over there. Like, no problem. I'm not mad at you for it. And, that's something that even, when I talk to my girlfriends sometimes, when I was telling them, even in the beginning, like, this is what I said. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. It's so embarrassing. And even recently, me and AJ, we have a relationship contract. We have a written agreement for the standards, agreement boundaries of our relationship and what we want and expect in the relationship. And we literally sat together and wrote it out. And, woman coming at me being like, oh my God, if I did that with my partner, he would run. And I'm like, well, it sounds like you might not be with the right person, or if you are, you're not setting your standards. So that was the moment where I'm like, I just spoke it and I meant it. And I was grounded in it. I was completely fine with him being like, oh, no problem. That's not going to work for me, or like, whatever it is that he would have done. I was like, that's fine. I'm not taking any less than this. So.
Thank you. And I loved how you looked at me when you described how you looked at him, by the way. You just did it again.
He knows.
All right, the other question goes back a little further. You mentioned there were like different stories to uncover, like the external story, like the love story, the vulnerability story. Can you go back to that again and mention like the 5 different stories I think you mentioned, and like share a little bit more about that? Thanks.
Yeah, so of course there's so many nuances. It could be trillions of types of stories, but let's keep it very, very simple. And we're looking to really look at your work story, so business, career, whatnot, finances, your relationship, your money story, essentially. Relationships, which could be with your family, your love life, your friendships. Wellness, which is your health, your body, eating, how you treat yourself, like on a physical form level. Self-worth, which is how you your relationship to yourself and how you love yourself and the worth that you give to yourself. And then there's visibility, which is your willingness to be seen by the external world and your relationship with the external.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So now, does anyone else, any other here have any questions? I know there are some of you, but maybe you're thinking like, I can't answer that. So you can ask any question. Like, do you have a question? Okay. Yep. No, so grab the microphone, darling, so then we can all hear you. Thank you, darling. Thank you for being brave and courage. I know you didn't want to do it, but I felt you had one. Felt it.
So how about trauma with your childhood, with abandon issues and those things that you carry to yourself, and basically it shows to your relationship, and how can you change those? Mm-hmm. How can you let it go? And how do you know how to let it go?
Mm-hmm. So I'll start with the last one. How do you know when to let it go? Because of course, when we're looking at trauma, childhood wounds, I mean, where do you start, right? Where do you even begin? And so where I suggest beginning is looking at your goals in business, in life. You know what in your life isn't going right. If you did an audit, even using those 6 categories that I just shared with you, if you literally took a pen and paper and gave yourself like a 1 out of 10 rating, you're gonna know which one, like for example, let's use relationship, really everything else is 10, 9, 7, and then your relationship is a 3. That's where you start. You start asking yourself, okay, why? What's going on in relationship? What are the patterns that I'm engaging in? What are the behaviors that I'm engaging in that are most hurting me as it applies to relationship? And again, this is just a way to focus your mind, because in the end, it doesn't really matter, because the way it's manifesting in your relationship, it's manifesting everywhere else. So you heal that, it ripples through your entire life and all categories of your life. So you want to look at, using the relationship example, okay, I have a lot of pain around not attracting the man that I want. Okay, where's that coming from? And then when you're asking these questions, and whether you're working through this on your own or with a coach or with a therapist or specialist or whatever it may be, you're going to start seeing, well, it's hurting me because I want to love and I can't find it. Okay, where's that coming from? And you essentially start to, in NLP, we call it chunking it down. You start chunking it down, and what you're going to start seeing is that, well, there's a belief that I'm holding that I'm too much, or that I'm not enough. Okay, where's that coming from? What's the story that you're telling yourself around it? And then chunk down, and you'll see, well, growing up, I always had to prove myself to my parents. Okay, great. How did you have to prove yourself? Well, let's say my mother, she was overbearing, and she always wanted more and more and more of me, so I needed to show up in a certain way in order for me to get her love. So this requires, obviously, a level of self-awareness and the ability to be able to sit with yourself and the harsh truths. And then from there, then you start the actual healing and emotional processing work. What does that look like? It could look like breathwork, giving your body the opportunity to actually pick up on that mother wound and heal it. It could look like hypnotherapy and exploring what specifically, at what specific moment did I believe that I wasn't worthy, or did I believe that this was an issue? And actually allowing yourself to process that on a body level, because your body is storing the memories. I don't know if you've read The Body Keeps the Score, and this is living in your subconscious mind, which doesn't have a sense of time. Your subconscious doesn't understand time. So all the wounds are actually happening right now. And when you go back and you plug into that emotion and you allow yourself to fully feel that emotion, then that's when you can release it from your system. And really another way that's more cognitive to think about it is that when you are running, for example, you might be running your relationship based on a belief that a 5-year-old formed. So you're running your life based on a 5-year-old's beliefs. And so understanding that, plugging into that, that's where you start. And what you'll see inevitably is that the moment that charge is released and you start making different decisions in your life, something else is going to pop up. And that's where you go. So think about it as a whack-a-mole game, where you go for the big one, the big domino, the one that's really, really hurting you right now. You chunk down, you find what is causing this, you release it, and then you realize that there's something else waiting in line. Now, this is a lifelong work, which is the bad news, but the good news is that when you do this the first time, you're like, oh my God, feels like so much. But for example, the example that I gave that took me 11 months, I can now take patterns and limiting beliefs and I can run them through my system in weeks, sometimes even days, and completely release and rewrite that story. Like, the ability to rewrite that story gets faster the more that you do this, because it's like, oh, where's my trigger? There's my trigger. What's the emotion? That's the emotion. How do I process it? Here's my tool belt. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to process it, I'm going to release it, and I'm going to rewrite the program consciously. So that can happen within days or weeks once the process is learned.
Love the answer. Like, it's very, I can feel it viscerally, right? And, so if people are here, maybe here or there or there or there watching, so how can they reach out to you if they want to work with you, if they want to talk to you, if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, of course. So I made it super easy for everyone because I'm the same on Celinne Da Costa everywhere. You just need to know how to spell my name right. That's the only caveat. So my website is CELINNEDACOSTA.com. So 1 L and 2 N's, and there you can see I work with clients privately. I also have a group program that's called Master Your Story, where I walk people through the process of rewriting your internal story, and then turning that into an external story that's very, very profitable, very influential, and very impactful. So I have that group program process as well. And you can also find me on oh my God, this mic. Sorry. You can find me on Instagram, where I'm constantly posting about the things I talked about today. I'm sharing stories. And you can also find out about any program that I'm offering through there. So it's at Celinne Da Costa, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Anywhere you want to find me, it's Celinne Da Costa. But I highly recommend that you go give me a follow on Instagram, because that's where I post the good shit. Yeah. And the good shit. And then the better shit is in my email list. Ooh. That's where I really go behind the scenes. So website, social media, email list.
I just love the good shit, better shit. Someone hanging with me now. Better shit. So any more questions? Why are you thinking about this question? When's the workshop? There you go.
Oh, yes. So it's a live workshop, which is really exciting because you get me and AJ, who's a high-performance coach, in your brain in real time. Everything I talked about around rewriting your story, specifically with relationship, we're going to be there doing this with you. It is May 1st and May 2nd from 7 to 11 p.m. EST. So it's important. It's friendly
New York
for
time.
Yeah, it's friendly
East
for
Coast time.
US. It's friendly for Bali. It's friendly for I think every time zone it's friendly for Europe as well. It's pretty friendly. So
that time again. that time
it's
again.
May 1st and 2nd from 7 to 11 p.m. EST. So highly recommend that you come and join us, because this is going to be a one-time opportunity. We might be rerunning it again. We just don't know when. But this is going to be super, super powerful. And in 2 days, you can reverse years worth of damage. And I am not kidding.
Love that.
For
Love
reals.
that.
And then the website for that
Yeah.
is, honey, do we have a bit.ly? What is it?
Not yet, but you can find it on your social media.
You can find it in the bio
Yeah.
of my Instagram.
Yeah, and once you know it, send it to us and we'll put it on ours as well.
Awesome.
Now, technically, we should probably end it there, but I don't feel like we want to end it, because there's a question in my mind, right? Which there might be. If there's any other questions, please ask us. Okay. So, you've spoken about the soul a lot, and you've spoken about the body a bit as well, that our experiences are locked into the body. So maybe for people at home or people here, so how would you describe the soul, and how do people tap into it? And is the soul the body from this perspective, or is it different?
Oh, okay. Leave me with that question. The soul, at least from my understanding and my experience, is the observer. So when you're thinking about the thinker, the mind, the monkey mind, you have the one who thinks the thoughts, and then you have the one who watches the thoughts being thought, if that makes sense. And so one of the practices that I have for myself, and I also give to my clients, is understanding who's the monkey mind and who is the soul, which is the observer and the one that carries all the wisdom. Now, it's important to understand that your body is its own container of infinite wisdom. And your body oftentimes holds more information. Well, not oftentimes. It does hold more information than your mind does. And so part of the work, the reason why I keep saying mind, body, emotion, and spirit is because your story lives in all four of these bodies. So mind is what you consciously, most of you are very familiar with the mind. It's the thinking, it's the thoughts, oh, I should do this, or I should do this launch, or oh my God, I should eat this today. That's the mind, and the mind can do really beautiful things, but it's very limited when you're just focusing on one and you're ignoring the other three. The second is your body, which is your wisdom. You have your intuition when you move your body, when you have that gut feeling in your body of like, this isn't right. It's the training yourself to actually be present in your meat suit and listen to what your body has to say. And by the way, your body holds your story as well. When you go to, I don't know how many of you have done a breathwork session and you're like, oh my God, I just cried so much and I have no idea what happened, because your mind was offline, but your body was processing some shit. It was processing some stories. And then you have your emotional body, which is going to be, your feelings, love, anger, sadness, which is in itself, they are guides to help you understand, when you're angry and you ask yourself why you're angry, it means your boundary was crossed. It means that you were triggered for some reason. So your emotions are giving you so much information. And then you have your soul, which is, what I believe, again, it's that connection to source. It's that bigger knowing. And to understand, your soul is to be able to actually sit with it and give it time. In meditation, every single morning, I sit for at least 20, 30 minutes and I just let my soul speak. And even when I'm doing hypnosis or sessions with my clients, and they're like, I ask them, well, why do you want to do this? Oh, well, I really want to I really want to do this launch. I want to have 3,000 people signing up, and I want to make this much money, And then I'm like, all right, stop, breathe, connect to your body, sink in. I want you to find your soul. It's a feeling, by the way. It's not a thought. It's a feeling. Connect to your soul. Now tell me why you want to do this. Your heart. The answer, completely different. I want to be a role model for my kids. Like, cool. 3 minutes ago, you were telling me that you wanted to launch because a lot of people need to know what you're doing. But what it really boils down to is what your life's purpose is, and your soul and your essence. And so it's really important to differentiate who's in the driver's seat all the time. Really understand who's doing the talking right now. Who's doing the talking right now? When you're getting up and you're doing an Instagram a story, who's doing the talking? When you're sharing a caption or you're writing your sales page, who's doing the talking? Is it your ego? Is it your soul? And what you will find is that your soul, which is, it's your heart space, you know, it's a feeling of truth. It's a feeling of higher purpose. It's flow. It's, you know, the moments, bliss, flow. We've all experienced moments of it. That's when your soul is in the driver's seat. We actually have the power and the responsibility to create space for our soul to be in the driver's seat much more often than our ego. So that's the difference, and understanding that we got 4 peeps on board. We got the feeling, emotions, we got body, we got mind, we got spirit, soul, and we need to balance all of them out. It's a team. They're playing together as a team. If the mind's the only one that's going, then you're leaving the team behind. You're not going to get very far.
Mamma mia. I feel like I was moved to tears, and I was like, that was beautiful. I love the way you explained that, and yeah, for me that's probably one of the most powerful things that, and there's been many powerful things actually that you've given us today, and that thing about having that conversation with your soul in the morning, 20 minutes just being silent. Maybe for some people here, even though we're in Bali and you know everyone's meditating apparently in Bali, right? Everyone's meditating. I meditate for half an hour, right? So maybe give people here just an access to that. So what's the easiest way for them to meditate? Because that 20-30 minutes in the morning I think is key. So maybe you can just give people a bit of a tip how to do it.
Yeah, so it looks like there's different ways to do it, and actually I was thinking of recording you just gave me this idea that I should probably record like a hypnosis and offer that. But it's really being in your space, first of all, wherever it is that you meditate, closing your eyes, and there's a technique that I love using, which is, well, breath, of course, the breath gets you back into your body. So as you're breathing in, imagining your breath coming in, and then grabbing your thoughts. And then essentially, because basically what you want to see is your mind, and then your thoughts are like in a Netflix screen, kind of like seeing all the little Netflix screen. And instead of associating or connecting to my thoughts, I'm observing my thoughts coming through, and then using my breath. I grab my thoughts, and I essentially let them go using my breath. And when I felt like the Netflix screen has cleared out and I can feel clarity in my mind, I'll imagine a staircase in front of me, and then 10 steps down into my heart space. I open a beautiful golden door, and in that heart space is my sanctuary. It's like I have in my head, I have a house, and it's in front of the beach, and it's beautiful, and it's white, and there's a grand piano. I mean, it has the floors. I know all the floors by heart now. It could be a mansion, it could be a garden, it could be forest, jungle, whatever it is that you want. Just imagine this place exactly as you want it to be. And in this place, I see my soul. And it's been a very interesting exercise to even remember my own face. You know, and remembering, you know, if you actually close your eyes right now and you think about, do you know what your face looks like other than what you see in the mirror? And I see her, she's dressed in white. Every day she has a really fabulous outfit because that's just how I like it. And she's always dressed in white. And then she grabs my hand and she takes me to one of my favorite seats. So sometimes it could be the balcony. Sometimes we'll go to the beach. Sometimes it'll be like this really cool couch it's like an in-ground pillowy couch situation. And then I just ask her a series of questions. And some of my favorite questions to ask that I can share with the audience is, first of all, is what do I need to know? What is it? What do I need to know? Another one is one that AJ actually gave me, which is what am I pretending not to see? Another one is just direct questions like, what is it that I need to be focusing on in my business right now? And what you'll actually see is that there's a very distinct, and when I'm working with my clients, when I take them through this meditation, I'm instantly like, who's doing the talking? Because there's actually, ego has its own frequency, and soul is just, it's truth. It vibrates with the frequency of truth. It's hard to, it's a feeling. And when my soul starts speaking or communicating, first of all, I know that it's real because it doesn't usually speak in like, well, first you should, set up this funnel, and then you should hire, like, it doesn't, your soul doesn't speak like that. Usually it's metaphors, it's images, it's words that it's very simple language, and it makes sense when you go off and you think about it. And then whenever it's my ego coming in, I'm like I can feel the frequency. I'm like, okay, no, let's let it back. And I'm speaking to this now where I just, it's so visceral in my body, but the first few times I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this kind of feeling? But it's a really, I've been doing this for over a year now, every single day, and now I can hear her speak. And it comes through not just when I'm in meditation. Sometimes I'll be doing something and I can hear this voice of like, why don't you try this instead? And I know that there's just a different frequency between the soul speak and ego speak. It's just very distinct. But you yourself need to get familiar with it. But once you get familiar with it within yourself, I can now pick it up in other people, and I can feel when somebody's speaking from their ego as opposed to connected to their heart space and their soul.
I've asked that question, I don't know how many times to people, probably a few. But that's the first time I've heard anything like that. What a beautiful guided way to your soul, man. So if today is the thing you've got that you need to do it, then do it. Because I think that would be extraordinarily valuable for people, to be led through that. But the detail, everyone get to get the detail. Me, I'm like, I sit down, I breathe in and I breathe out, watch my breath, and I'm good. And you're like, I go down the stairs, there's 10. I was like, I love it. Really, so please, put it into action, because I think that would really appeal, and support and assist a lot of people to make that journey to their soul beautiful.
And by the way, that internal world becomes real. It becomes real and it becomes portable. When you create that sanctuary, or for me it's that house, or for you could be a garden, a jungle, everywhere I go, when I need to get back into connection, when I need to get back into bliss, into peace, I have it right now. Like, it's here, I have it. It's I'm in the house, So the more you practice it, the more you can bring yourself back into that state. And the more you bring yourself back into the state, then you can recognize when you're not. And that's how you can find, okay, I'm out of alignment. I'm out of frequency. And so there you can say, you know what? No, let's look at that, and then go through the process that I described, which obviously I described at very high level. It's a much more in-depth process, but what's really important to understand is that once you know the process, a lot of people panic saying like, I don't know how to start. Like, is this going to take me years and years and years? When you understand the process and you actually understand how the body works, how the nervous system works, basically, like, you understand the science of it as well as the energetics of it. It's really possible to create these very deep quantum leaps.
Love it. Absolutely beautiful. So we're gonna. You got one question? Alrighty.
How much time do we have?
Oh, we're kind of there, but man, if there's a question you have, it means that other people want to hear it too. So go for it.
Well, again, I'm coming back to saying thanks for being so vulnerable and sharing so openly and transparent, which allowed me to ask a question I probably wouldn't have asked otherwise. So I got to a point where I was like done dating around and all that stuff, and I really felt I was wanting to get deep with one person. So I kind of did all that fun stuff, like calling someone in and just inviting it in. And what happened with me is that at the same time I met two different women, both of them just incredibly wonderful. And I know for myself, like, I don't want to build like two relationships at the same time. It's just too much. I want to go deep, like, one way. And I'm just like, I'm like really falling for it, and I'm falling in love. I really love both of them, actually, to be honest. And so I don't know. I've been trying to make a decision or whatever, And what I did also was I told both of them that the other one exists and that I have like real feelings for the other one. They both reacted in such a wonderful way by really appreciating my honesty and authenticity, and being just grateful for me that I have this love inside of myself. It's difficult to put it into a question, but like, I'm just sharing this right now, and I really don't know what to do, because I'm just like very afraid of that the story with one of these persons has to end. and I'm afraid of making like the wrong choice. And when I zoom out of my scenario and like watching myself from the outside, it's like easy to say, oh, just pick one and you know, that's life. But when I'm inside of that story, it's not that easy. Yeah.
You know, like the first thing I want to say is you're so courageous for actually talking about it, right? And, you know, I know you a bit, but I've got to know you a whole lot more through you being vulnerable and open enough to ask that question. So firstly, and then Celine, I'm sure, will answer. But I just want to acknowledge you, man. That takes courage. So much respect and love for you, my brother. Beautiful.
So my first question for you is, what do you want?
I want to build a life in a relationship with one person.
Okay.
And go deep. And what you described basically was, I love what you were saying, that you both got together also to, you know, find your blind spots and work on your insecurities and everything that's coming up, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you want to do that with one person?
Because I have this, it's a very good question. I'm not having a 100% clear answer to that. So there could be a different scenario, but basically from what I've learned, what I've been growing up with, the norms, the rules, what everything, it's difficult to imagine anything else. And when I'm coming to the question of, hey, how much time do I have in a day or in a week or in a month or a year, in a lifetime? Like, how deep can I go with like two people at the same time, and then also logistics, like, sorry, but Christmas and
so that sounds
yeah.
So notice that's mind.
Yeah.
That's talking right now.
Yeah.
So it seems that the conflict is there because it's trying to show you something.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what that thing that it's trying to show you is, but I do know that clarity comes from asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me that you are making assumptions around what you want based on what you've been grown up to believe, and what your belief system and your environment and your culture tells you is the right thing to do or the right thing to want. Now, I just want a disclaimer that I myself am monogamous, so I'm not sitting here being like, are you polyamorous or you're not? But it could be, and you know what? That's an exploration. But regardless of what the answer, the right answer is, it's really asking yourself, you're questioning what parts of this is my conditioning and what parts of this is what I truly want in my heart. And the first question is the most uncomfortable one that you maybe take for granted, which is, okay, you said, what do I want? I want to build a relationship with somebody. Okay, why is it one person? And it could be that the answer at the other end of the tunnel is still one person. But what we do is we just assume that certain belief systems that we adapt are the ones that we should have. When we actually take the time to break it down and be like, this comes from, you know, my mother or my dad cheating on my mother, or this happened, that, and you actually start seeing this is coming from there, and because of these events that happened in my life and because of these wounds that I had, I am now believing that I need to be committed to one person. Then, only then can you choose. Because until then, like Carl Jung, you will continue to let your unconscious rule you, and you will call it fate. And it's that situation of, oh, I have two amazing women and now I'm stuck between them. What do I do? What do I do? And that's the ego's way of creating drama. And not actually addressing the whatever is anchoring it in that is keeping you from selecting or not the woman that is truly right for you. Now, logistics and stuff are important. There are, in this case, it's important. So I'm not saying it's not, but in this case, logistics should not determine your fate, and should not determine what your soul is looking for in the experience that your soul is having. It could also be that you want to maybe experience these two women right now, and then down the line decide that you actually want one. It might be, so what I want to encourage you, because I'm not going to tell you should do this, you should do that. But I will encourage you to ask your questions and question everything that you believe in. Only then are you actually free to make a choice that is aligned with the truth of who you are. Until then, you're just being ruled by beliefs and conditioning.
And I mean, of course, I started looking into that and questioning that as well, right? And then there's one more level, of course, to the story, because it's not only one person involved, which is me, but there's also two more people involved in this situation right now. And of course, I can clarify that for myself, regardless of what the other people are feeling or saying. However, like both basically stated very clearly that they're not in this to engage into like a bigger picture scenario here, call it like that, which I love that they both set their boundaries very clearly. I really appreciate that. So this is also something to consider in this whole process.
Well, another thing again, it comes back to set yourself free of what you think you need to do. And actually start to understand where this is coming from, and not only for you, but also for them. What do they want? What do they truly, truly want? And it might be, again, there's so many different ways that this could go depending on the direction that you decide to head on, hence your own responsibility. But it could be that you want both and neither of them want that. And that results into you calling in another woman that you're 100% convinced about. So remember that what's happening right now is an opportunity, as is any challenge that we're facing, any difficulty that we're facing, is an opportunity for us to address what are the unconscious wounds that we're playing out right now that need resolution. When you actually address the wound, instead of getting caught up in the drama and the stories that are in the surface level, you address the wounds, then it becomes clear what you have to do up top. Does that make sense?
It does.
It doesn't exactly solve your problem.
Exactly.
That's why you should come to our workshop. Really.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
But truly, because this is the work that needs to be done. It's dissolving whatever is keeping you stuck needs to be dissolved. It's kind of like you're trying to drive from A to B, and your mirror is just full of dirt, and you're like, why can't I get there? Why can't I get to my destination? But the thing is, you need to start seeing what's keeping you from getting what you want right now. It's not just about what you want, but what's in the way of you getting what you want.
Thank you.
And this is something which we can obviously take offline, but again, I just want to thank you for being really honest, man, and being very open and vulnerable, because through you sharing it, there's other people maybe watching this or people in the room which are perhaps going through something similar or have a similar outcome in their lives right now. So I think it's really powerful, and thank you as well, Celinne, for being open to doing some kind of live ad hoc coaching with you. And I'm sure that that there's more to the story that you can unpack, at a time of your choosing. Should you decide? Yeah, should you decide to actually do that? And I just feel great about that you feel comfortable enough, again, because that's really what this is about, right? So this whole Q&A isn't really about the surface level shit, pardon the French. This is about going under the bonnet and finding out what makes us tick as human beings, right? So we all got our own different shell or story that we come in with, but there's these fundamental things that we will have in common regardless of our color, race, background that connect us, right? And this is the thing which I love about forums like this, because then we get to really see each other and see what we have in common, So thank you for being an access to that, and obviously thank you, my darling, for setting it up, right? It's beautiful. And so we're going to close the show, but the way we do it, so you are the beautiful guest, and so just after I finish doing this little bit that I'm about to do, then you have time to express, to share, or to reinforce anything that you feel drawn or moved to reinforce, share, and so on. And then after that, we'll finish the show there, all right? So I'll give you a little moment to think on what that might be, all right? So for those of you watching here, so please, every Monday, 6:30 here at Tropical Nomad, here in Canggu, Ichi, Guzman, usually Bella, but I think she's away this week. Thank you so much for being the technical partner, and philosophical partner, Ichi and the guys here, doing so much for Bali and Indonesia that is unbelievable. So I'm really happy to be supporting, aligning, and sharing in what this greater mission is for us on this planet, which is great. Now, next week we have a king So we have, and she knows him really well. So Erdogan is king of Karambitan, which is in Tabanan. So next week he'll be here. Yeah, I see G'day go, what? So he'll be here. He's a beautiful human being, an incredible person, an incredible man. And I'm really looking forward to having a good chat with him and kind of getting, beneath the bonnet of what his story is. And, obviously that one holds a larger container for Indonesia as a whole, which I love. So that's coming up. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Bali time, we have the Clubhouse version of this. Tomorrow's topic is the sex transmutation of energy, which the book Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, very famous book, that chapter is the most misunderstood chapter in the whole book. The sex transmutation of energy. So tomorrow we have Genevieve Pleasure, and she's got a whole bunch of her colleagues, and they're all like sexologists, and like they have billion dollar clients they take through this process. So tomorrow's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. I have no idea where it's going to go, but I've interviewed her already. She is a fascinating woman. I love her. She's amazing. So that will be tomorrow. And on Thursday, remember, all this is on our SpeakuP Monday group. We have Benedetto Daniele, Italiano, anche lui, right? Italian. And he has spent 20 or 30 years traveling the world, studying all of the ancient scriptures and religions on the planet, and has a most incredible way of translating the coding that is there for all of us. And it's called the Regenesis Scroll. So he'll be on Thursday as a podcast, and all the details will be on our SpeakuP Monday group. So join Facebook SpeakuP Monday group. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, or hearing you tomorrow, for those of you on Clubhouse, SpeakuP Monday group. And now I just want to thank the audience for coming. Thank you to every single one of you for being part of this. And if you want to be in the audience, just come and join in. It's free, 6:30, come a bit earlier, but 6:30 every Monday here at Tropical Nomad in Canggu. You will love it, and you get to connect with some amazing people. So, having said all of that, I'm going to take a breath. Exhale, and then I'm going to pass it on to you, my darling. Thank you so much. I acknowledge you for being amazing and just being vulnerable, beautiful, open, and just really giving with your energy and your time and your knowledge, which I'm sure will help anyone who watches this. So thank you very much, darling. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So final words is, no matter who you are or where you're at in your journey, what we talked about today, this work, is work you must do. It's non-negotiable. And I say that from the place of, if you want to live a life of fulfillment, if you want to live a life where you're not a slave to your own unconscious, to your own past, to your own story, one of the things that I always share with my clients is that the parts of your story you don't own will own you. And back to the topic of taking full and radical responsibility for your life. Yes, there is a less pretty side, which means looking at all the things that you're doing that you don't like, and all the shadow aspects, and all the things that you're like, oh, this is uncomfortable, this is vulnerable, I'm afraid of this. But the other side of that is that you have complete control and sovereignty over the direction of your life. And when you become a master of your own story and everything we've talked about today, when you learn to let go of your armor, to actually release all these unconscious bits that have been holding you back from living the life that you want to be, when you commit to stepping fully into your truth and sharing yourself with others from that place, that is the moment where you become a master of your life, and you get to rewrite and literally design your story the way that you want it to be. And so it's really important that when you go off and you're thinking about, what's my story? What's the story I want to share with the world? Understand that, yes, externally, you do, when you come out with a really powerful, compelling, captivating story that resonates with your audience, of course, you will become more influential and a recognized leader in your space. Of course, you're going to sell out your launches, make more income, have people paying for you and your brand. Of course, you're going to create impact and have, more followers followers or more people looking and reading about you and all that jazz. But what's really, really important to understand is that outside public story is just the tip of the iceberg. And what you really want to be focusing your energy and attention on is that internal story, and being able to release all that's been holding you back so that you can live a story that truly fulfills you. Because, as I said before, what is success without fulfillment? And so I really invite you to come away from this today and asking yourself, what's the stories that I've been telling myself that are holding me back from being where I want to be in life and having the fulfillment that I want to have? And now what is the story that I want to be telling moving forward? And last but not least, who must I become to be this story? And how do you become the best story that you ever told? Which is essentially what I teach. And for those of you who are interested in receiving support on this, please make sure to reach out to me. I have limited spots for private coaching, and what I really highly encourage you to look into is my Master Your Story group coaching program, where I take you through this entire process of going from your inner story, releasing, unlocking everything that's holding you back, really embodying your higher purpose, who you're meant to be on a mind, body, spirit, mind, body, spirit. What did I miss? Emotion level, and being able to come out into the world with your purpose externally in a way that's completely, fully aligned with the truth of who you are and gets you the external success that you deserve, but matching that with what you create on the inside. So that's what I wanted to share.
Love it. Thank you.